Hey everyone, how's it going? So I'm not looking forward to this one, but if you've been on the internet, or at least Pokemon YouTube lately, you'll have noticed that there have been a ton of channels dedicated to the solo Pokemon challenge, the kind of one that I did a while back with Magikarp, and then followed up about half a year ago. Now, in keeping up with these challenge videos, there are a couple things I noticed. First of all, unlike my videos, most of the other YouTubers, like My Dry Bread, who's probably the biggest one, most of the videos do not allow for items in battle. So basically the items menu or bag menu, can't use that, kind of like a multiplayer battle. And this leads me to the second thing I noticed, that despite the fact there are so many different challenges out there and so many different Pokemon in games, there are certain Pokemon we almost never see, like Feebas. And this is going to be the start of my new series, the quote-unquote impossible series. Make sure you recognize those quotes, because I don't know if these are impossible, but these are Pokemon I never see used in these challenges, and when you do see them, items are used. I want to know, if we stick to the itemless rule, will we be able to beat the entire game using a single Pokemon? Now the rules are the same as before, just a quick refresher. We are allowed any Pokemon for HMs, but in battle, we use the one Pokemon, no cheating, no glitching, and that's pretty much about it. And if you're wondering, well, J-Rose, didn't you say Magikarp would be impossible? Why is Feebas possible? And probably a lot of you are wondering that because Feebas and Magikarp are pretty similar. In fact, Feebas is definitely the Generation 3 counterpart to Magikarp. I mean, look at their stats. They're pretty much identical. Sure, they swap defense and special defense and attack and special attack, but the totals are the same. The level up moves are the same: Splash, Tackle at level 15, Flail at level 30. Why the heck am I even trying this? Didn't I just say it would be impossible? Well, my friends, there is one key difference that some of you may know, and that is, unlike Magikarp, which cannot learn TMs, Feebas can. Not a spectacular assortment of moves, but definitely more than enough necessary for me to think this at least may be possible. I say may because we're using a Feebas. It's just like a slightly better Magikarp. But of course, I'm me, and so, without further ado, I present to you my attempt of trying to beat Pokemon Ruby with just a Feebas. So a couple things before I get into the run. First of all, how do I get the Feebas? That's actually kind of simple. Usually this is what I like to do, except in Fire Red, Leaf Green, and Red and Blue, where this isn't possible. Basically, I breed an egg of the Pokemon I want in a different game, go through the first part of the game normally. So you're right, I'm not using a Feebas the entire game. It's not possible unless I use a cheating device, which I'd rather not use, and then simply trade the egg into the game I want to use, in this case Pokemon Ruby, wait for it to hatch, and voila! I got a Feebas at level 5. It works out pretty nicely. The reason you trade the egg, by the way, is so that it has your original trainer number, you don't have to worry about obedience, and feels the most legitimate to me. Now, I'm sure some of you are curious, why Ruby? Why not Sapphire or Emerald? Well, Emerald's a very different game, so that's why not Emerald. But why not Sapphire? The answer is because Feebas sucks, and Ruby makes it suck slightly less. Let me explain. Like Magikarp, Feebas does not have any attacking moves at level 5. It knows Splash. In order to give it an attacking move, we have to use all 40 power points of Splash that give us the move Struggle, a typeless move of 50 base power that we're going to be using a whole bunch at the beginning. In order to use up all 40 power points easiest, we want to find a Pokemon that doesn't attack us. In Sapphire, we have Lotad appearing on Route 102 20% of the time, which does attack. In Ruby, we have Seedot, which appears 20% of the time, and knows Harden and Bide. It doesn't attack. Beautiful. It's actually even better than Metapod or Kakuna, because between the power points of those two moves and the fact that Bide takes a few turns, you can actually use all 40 splashes on a single Seedot, making it superior to use Splash against. So that answers that question. Anyway, once you do that, the only trainer you have to battle is the youngster, and he's actually really easy to beat. You can beat him at level 5 or 6 with just Struggle, and once you do, you actually can sneak by every other trainer all the way to Petalburg Woods, and in Petalburg Woods, you can find Silcoon and Cascoon, each at 10%, so 20% chance to find one of them. And the reason we want these Pokemon is, like Seedot, they don't attack, but they give you slightly more experience points, so it's just quicker to KO Silcoon or Cascoon over sticking to level 3 or 4 C-Dot. So we're going to KO them a whole bunch, and basically we're going to do very much the same thing as we do with Magikarp, where we level up. Once we get to a sufficient level, we try battling other trainers, and hopefully we get through this section of the game with as many experience points as possible. There are potions available here, and we can just use all our money on potions right away because unlike with Magikarp, we're not using them for the gym since we can't. So it's just an easy way to heal. If you go to the Pokemon Center, yes, it's free, but all your power points are restored. So it's best to use potions, at least for as long as you can. And hopefully you don't have to spend too much time going to the Pokemon Center and finding more C-Dot or Silcoon and Cascoon if that's what you'd prefer, until you hit level 15 and get Tackle, which is weaker, but you don't have to worry about power points anymore, so it's kind of better, in a sense. Of course, one thing Tackle would be terrible for is the first gym, and Roxanne is, and I'm not exaggerating, I have done many of these challenges. Some of them I haven't published to YouTube, but I have done many gym leaders. I've had many challenges stagnate at a point. I spent many hours on a single section of the game that you can usually get through in like 5 minutes. Roxanne took me more time than pretty much all the most difficult and tedious sections of the game combined. I spent longer on Roxanne than I did on some of the runs I have done. It's insane. And let's take a look at why. So before we even challenge Roxanne, let's look at how we stack up against just this random Geodude from the trainer in her gym. You can technically skip this trainer, but it's one of the weaker Geodudes at level 10. Now, Feebas, unlike Magikarp, has really terrible defense. And since we're not using potions, we're not able to recover. If you're wondering if Tackle would be better, by the way, it wouldn't. We have to use Struggle because Struggle is typeless, meaning it's doing neutral damage. But Geodude has really good attack and really good defense. So we do very little damage, take back a lot of damage, and I'm not even able at my current level to get past a single Geodude. Roxanne's, by the way, is level 14, and it knows better moves. So yeah, this is when I realized I was in a lot of trouble. And the only thing to do, since although Feebas can learn TMs, none are available, at least that Feebas can learn at this point in the game. I can't use items even though they have X attacks early on. I would be able to just get through this gym so quick under my old rules, but no, have to do this itemless. So I just have to go to Route 116, battle some more trainers, battle stronger wild Pokemon, and just keep leveling up. A lot. A lot. Like, Magikarp, if you remember, I needed to get to level 19, I believe, my first time in Red, and then I think it was around level 14. I don't have the video in front of me in Fire Red. Yeah, we're soaring past level 20, and if we fight Roxanne in the mid-20s, it's not close. Geodude from Roxanne, like I said, knows better moves, like Rock Tomb, which also lowers speed, and Rock Throw, which has the same power as Rock Tomb, but misses slightly less. Why it needs both of them, I don't know, but they get the same type attack bonus. Base 50 power is pretty decent early game, and oh yeah, I'm using a move that deals recoil damage. Not even getting past the Geodude. At this point, I'm starting to freak out, and Feebas, like Magikarp, is part of the level up group that requires the second most experience points, or the most prior to Ruby and Sapphire, to get from one level to the next. It's called the slow group. Hooray! So I'm spending I'm already at hour 7 or 8 at this point. I'm starting to really get frustrated. But the frustrations have only begun, because I'm knocking out a ton of Pokemon, and this is causing a problem that I'm going to need to deal with. You see, I don't like to talk about this in my videos because usually I try not to deal with this, but because this run is so tough, we need to talk about the fact that Pokemon stats are partially determined by what you do, namely what Pokemon you knock out. Now, the mechanics of Pokemon stats are kinda needlessly opaque. Game Freak did everything they could not to tell you anything about how your stats are calculated. But essentially, there's a bunch of different numbers that go into it, including the base stats, which I show, IVs, which are basically like your Pokemon's genetics, and then EVs, which I want to be talking about right now. Essentially, these things have been around since Generation 1, but changed very dramatically in Gen 3, and the way they changed causes this problem. In Generation 1, you can max out all your EVs, and this was fine, so I didn't have to worry about what Pokemon I was knocking out or gaining too many EVs in one stat, because I would just be able to make up for it later. In this game, you're only able at most to maximize 2 stats. You can gain 252 EVs in a given stat and 510 overall. So, yeah, that's not really good if I want to be maximizing a stat, say, special attack, and I've gotten, and this is true to this point, 4 special attacking EVs. That's a bit of a problem. And trust me, without getting too math-y, having EVs and thus better stats is the difference between having an attack take out a Pokemon in 1 hit or 2 or 3 hits. And since I'm not allowed to use items, I want as many Pokemon to faint with 1 hit as possible. The more chances I have to get attacked, the harder or impossible this run will be. And none of the Pokemon here give special attack EVs. How do you know what EVs they give out? Well, you don't. There's a chart you can look up, and of course I've memorized it at this point. But let me tell you, basically no Pokemon gives special attack, including ones trainers have. There is one exception, because I said basically, that there is one that does. Ralts. Good old Ralts. Available on Route 102 at a beautiful 4%. Now, I have about 96 left EVs at this point because I've knocked out so many Pokemon, so keep that in mind. Most Pokemon give out 1 EVs, Silcoon and Cascoon give out 2 defense. So, you know, I've knocked out about 300 Pokemon. That's a lot. For the record, I'd already found a shiny Seedot at this point. That's a little lucky or very lucky, but it just gives you some perspective on how much time I've already spent. And now I'm seriously considering finding 96 Ralts at 4% each to get my special attack to be as high as it possibly could be, because although that won't affect me for Roxanne, it will be really important in the late game where, looking at Feebas's move pool, I plan on using special attacking moves. Well, of course I didn't do that. That would be an insane thing to do, which would take, I don't know how many hours. Like 12 or... yeah, that's how long it took. I think a little longer. And I would know because I did it. I found 96 Ralts. 96 at 4%. I know it sounds like I'm trying to drag this out to get more like video time, but seriously, I cannot overemphasize how much this drove me up a wall. So much so, I broke one of my unofficial rules. I usually do everything on a DS modified with capture card. Everything's on legitimate cartridge, always. I will never break that rule, but I used my clone console, the Retron 5, because I couldn't deal. I was just losing my mind. And in case you're wondering how I knew that I needed 96 EVs or that's what I had left, I had a spreadsheet, and every time I'd find a Ralts, I would mark it down on my spreadsheet, and yeah, I'd be like, oh my god, oh, a 10 found, oh my god, we found 20, woohoo! Seriously, I was going insane. I can imagine why no one has done this, and I promise you, this will be important later, but it just made this part of the game miserable. If I could get past Roxanne, there were several other easier Pokemon to find, but because I'm stuck here, this was what I had to do, or I would have maxed out my EVs before I ever beat Roxanne. Since even after I found the 96 Ralts, I still had to level up like 3 or 4 more levels, it was, maybe more. Like, I had to go all the way to level 30. And even at level 30, the battle with Roxanne is luck. Like, it's not pure luck. I had strategy, but it was kinda luck-based since I needed a very specific set of things to happen if I wanted to beat her. And as you watch some of my battles with Roxanne, and of course we'll get to the successful one in a second, I do want to mention right here that this is why I haven't been so keen on doing an itemless run like this. I mean, don't get me wrong, this video was still kind of fun, and there's definite strategy towards the end, but there are points in an itemless run, especially with a really terrible Pokemon like Feebas that I have no options. And so the strategy, sure, I'm using Struggle versus Tackle since it does nearly triple the damage. And I equip an Oran Berry as my held item to get me a little more HP, so that is technically strategy. But realistically, what are the two things that contribute most to the win? Number one, being at a super high level, way higher than I should be. And number two, luck. So getting to the successful battle, I needed Geodude to miss with Rock Tomb or Rock Throw. Luckily, the strongest moves for both Pokemon have chances to miss. Rock Tomb sucks because if I get hit enough times with it, I'll start losing speed and I can be outsped by the Nose Pass, which ended up happening. I ended up getting both some lucky misses and a critical hit, but you may also notice that Roxanne has 2 potions. So even though I didn't get super lucky with the damage range and she used both of them on Geodude, at least that meant she wouldn't have them for the Nose Pass, which can be even more trolly because it knows Harden, and Harden can end up causing me to do such little damage that the battle ends. In this case, we kind of hit each other back and forth, and I got an extremely lucky Rock Throw miss that would have taken me out, and that is how I won. You may also notice I'm still using the Retron here because I battled Roxanne, I'd say like 40 times. And yes, obviously I could have leveled up even more, but the truth is, I hate being so over-leveled. Like, being level 100 here would just make the rest of the game a complete joke. Plus, and this is the biggest reason, it's just boring. At least battling her again and again, there's some level of excitement, some level of suspense. Battling Wild Whismer, which is what I would do, is boring as heck. So that's Roxanne, I'm at level 30, and the next part of the game is a joke. Like, a complete joke. And of course it is. I'm still dealing with single-digit level Pokemon, and I'm level 30 with Flail and Tackle. I'm one-shotting things. It's insane. Consider that back in Fire Red Leaf Green with Magikarp, I was able to get past it at like, what, level 14, 15? I don't remember. Here I'm at level 30. I'm nearly double the level. And because of that, nothing, and this is true for pretty much the entire run, none of the non-quote-unquote major trainers give me any challenge. Sometimes there are some trainers I bring up. There really aren't too many in this run, and the ones that are a little difficult, there are specific reasons they are difficult for a short period of time, and they shortly thereafter become very easy. We'll get to that. But anyway, after I beat all the trainers, do what I need to do in Rustboro City, and head to Dewford, I fight Brawly. Brawly was a joke. Every time I engage a gym leader or any difficult trainer, I'll save before and do what I call a scouting battle, kind of where I start to figure out a strategy. I didn't even heal. I was at 55 health just randomly, and I won the first fight. Basically, what ended up happening is the Machop hit me with Karate Chop, used a Bulk Up, which I was worried about because it both raises offense and defense, so it can be kind of scary. And once Tackle did less than Flail, I started using Flail. And the Machop eventually put me to 11 health, which is a 100 base power Flail. It did take out the Machop, but it wouldn't take out the Makuhita in one hit. Thankfully, the Makuhita went for Bulk Up, and even with that defense boost, the Flail was able to take it out on the second attack, and that was it. I was trying to figure out some sort of strategy. I was going to use Flail and try and manipulate my HP, but the scouting battle ended up being the winning battle, and this is just another illustration of how being so overleveled really can make the game a joke. But don't worry, the difficulty ramps up fairly soon. So we're going to go to Slateport, we're going to battle all the trainers in the way, we're going to do what we need to do, head up to Mauville, and before we get to Mauville, there is the rival. Mewtwo, one of the most infamous rival fights in all of Pokemon speedrunning, and she's also a joke. But unlike Brawly, I didn't beat her on my first attempt, because initially I was at 4 health just from fighting other Pokemon, and I tried to just use Flail. Unfortunately, Grovyle, because of course I had to make sure she would have a Grovyle, has Quick Attack. So it will attack me and knock me out before I can use Flail. If you go in with full health, and I fought pretty much every trainer I could on the way, I've only gained 3 levels since Roxanne, just to point out both how over-leveled I am and how slow Feebas gained experience. But anyway, the same strategy for Brawly applies. Use Tackle till Flail does more damage, then use Flail. Yes, Grovyle does have grass moves, but my special defense is so good, it's not really a problem. It's close-ish, but this was my first attempt at full health, and I did beat her. There is a trainer, however, that I couldn't beat, the youngster right before May. And this is where we're going to encounter another big obstacle in the run, Steel-type Pokemon, or Aron, or Aron, I really don't know how to pronounce that thing, but I'm going to call it Aron. It's really, really annoying to face because I just have normal moves unless I decide to get Struggle again, which I will not do for the rest of the run. That was tedious as heck. But I do such little damage, even with like max-powered flails, plus they know Mud Slap. I'm able to defeat May easily, but this youngster, I wasn't able to beat him or anyone else that had a Steel-type Pokemon. And that's kind of a massive issue because the next gym leader, Wattson, has 2 Steel-type Pokemon, a Magnemite and a Magneton, and oh yeah, he also happens to be the Electric gym leader. So if you were worried there were no more difficult fights left, I am happy to disappoint you. This fight is horrible. I don't have any moves. Yeah, look at all those lovely TMs I can learn. Not one of them is available to me, which sucks because there are some great ones just beyond Mobile City. If I just had Rock Smash and could get to Route 111, there are some great TMs, but right now I am stuck with Tackle, Flail, and Splash, which does nothing. Or am I? Because there actually is a TM that I usually wouldn't even think about that would help. It's not the best, but it would definitely help against Wattson. And that is TM13, Ice Beam, available at the Game Corner. Now, the Game Corner sucks. Listen, I sometimes love the Game Corner when it has like a cool game like Voltorb Flip, but when it's just slots, unless there's some way I find to manipulate them, which I have done in Gen 1 and Gen 2, it can be okay, but I found no way to do that. I was there for about half an hour trying to win coins legitimately. You need like 4,000 to get Ice Beam, which is a lot, and that just wasn't happening. So I realized that the only option was for me to purchase the coins, and at 10,000 monies for 500 coins, I'm gonna need a lot of monies, 80,000 if my math isn't terrible. And getting money at this point of the game isn't super easy. You can't just rematch anyone you want, like Fire Red and Leaf Green, and it's not like there's an infinite supply of nuggets lying around, or is there? Because one new addition to Generation 3 are abilities, and one ability that I didn't even think of using but honestly should have been using long ago is Pickup, which Zigzagoon has. Now Pickup, every time you beat a Pokemon, and think about how many Pokemon I've defeated so far, there is a 10% chance of giving an item, and here's the chart. You can see there are all sorts of items at different probabilities, nuggets, rare candies, those will be useful, super potions, but unless it's a rare candy, pretty much anything I get I can sell and get some money. So let's catch a Zigzagoon. I'm not going to be using it in battle. It doesn't have to be in battle. It just has to be in your party. And technically, not just technically, it actually doesn't break any of my rules. I'm allowed other Pokemon for non-battling purposes. I don't see that as a violation. And even if you did, consider that I would be able to do what I'm doing right now without the pickup strategy. It would just take a whole lot longer. So because it doesn't violate any rule explicitly, I'm saying that the Zigzagoon pickup strategy is fine. And oh yeah, we don't just use one Zigzagoon, we use 5, our team of pickup artists, if you will. And once I had them, I of course fought all the trainers that were left, but I also just battled wild random Pokemon because, fun fact, Wattson is still going to be very difficult with Ice Beam. Ice Beam just makes it slightly, ever so slightly easier. Just look at the battles with Wattson. Magnemite is a problem, even once I'm at level 40 and beyond, because Magnemite knows Thunder Wave, which hits 100% of the time and paralyzes you. 25% of the time when you're paralyzed, you don't attack, plus you're super slow. Your speed is quartered. So what I would do is I'd equip a Cherry Berry and try to freeze the Magnemite, because I couldn't be paralyzed. There's no way to win this fight unless I'm at a super high level if I'm paralyzed. I had to be not paralyzed. And Ice Beam, the second reason I really liked it, that, oh yeah, it freezes Pokemon. And that's going to be sort of helpful. Now, it does so 10% of the time, so once again, we're really relying on luck, but that's the nature of an itemless Feebas run. And trust me, I think I battled Wattson more than I battled Roxanne. The reason Roxanne took so much longer is because of the EV training, the Ralts finding, etc. But just pure fight time, I spent way longer on Wattson. And you can see I'm leveling up. I'm at a pretty high level, and it's not really making a difference because although as I start to level up, and you can see I'm already level 50, I can usually get by the Magnemite with crits and freezes. They both know Shockwave, so their moves aren't missing. It's not like Roxanne where I even have that. And the Voltorb is not an issue whatsoever, although it can do better and worse things. The Magneton is where the real difficulty lies. She has potions as well, super potions, which heal it if you don't get the right range. It does a ton of damage, and since Ice Beam is not very effective, plus it's a fully evolved Pokemon, and one thing I should mention is my Feebas has terrible special attack. I briefly mentioned IVs or genetics earlier. Well, you can have a number assigned to you when the Pokemon is created between 0 and 31. My special attack IV was 5, so that's pretty brutal. Attack was 31, by the way. Very odd luck I got there, but the combination of it being not very effective with a terrible special attacking Feebas, Magneton is a real problem. And funny enough, the final battle was a terrible battle, but I got just the right amount of luck. Let me explain. So the Magnemite, I got freeze turn 1. I was always hoping for that, but turn 2 wasn't the end of the world. That means I'm not paralyzed, and I have my Cherry Berry, so that's good. The Voltorb will be a 2-hit KO, and I want to conserve my Ice Beams, so I was supposed to use Tackle twice. Unfortunately, since I've been doing this for like 2 hours, my focus slipped, as did my finger, and I used Flail, turning it into a 3-hit KO. So that was kinda terrible. The Magneton I'm also hoping to freeze, but that doesn't happen. Ice Beam, Thunder Wave, the Cherry Berry activates. Second Ice Beam, Thunder Wave, this isn't looking good. Sonic Boom, Ice Beam, okay, maybe. But then it uses Shockwave, and you can see just how much damage that does. Unless I crit, I lose, and I got a critical hit. Woohoo! A+ strategy, but in seriousness, listen, I did what I could. This is about as much strategy as I could put in, and I'm pretty happy so far. And I'm about to get a lot happier, because once we get past Mobile City, like I mentioned, there are a bunch of TMs we can teach. The most important being Return. Of course, you don't get Return right away. You do get Secret Power, which we'll use. You won't even probably see it in the run, because the next part of the game is really easy. There's actually a bit of a pattern forming between even and odd numbered gyms. And right after the difficult odd number gym, I'm super overleveled, so no trainer is really a problem. And eventually, we take the cable car up Mount Chimney, we defeat Maxie, I think it is, and we retrieve the meteorite, which usually doesn't really matter, but is actually super important because we can go to Fall Arbor Town and get TM27 Return. Now, Return is a really good move. Not in Gen 8 anymore, but it's a really good move. Base 102 power if you're at maximum friendship, and you better believe after all the walking and battling I've been doing, we're at maximum friendship, and yes, I did check. So that is humongous, having a physical attacking move, a normal move, so it hits pretty much most things normal effectively, and I'm going to be using Return a lot throughout this run, especially Flannery, the next gym. Now, like Brawly, Flannery really isn't too much of an issue. It would be nice if we had a water move. We'll get one soon, I promise. But for now, the best move we realistically have is Return, which kind of sucks because our Pokemon are a little bit more defensive than specially defensive, but in Ruby and Sapphire, team isn't really that good. It's 2 Slugma and a Torkoal. Return on each Slugma, 1-hit KO. Torkoal just used 3 returns. Now, I did lose once, So she was a little more difficult than Brawly, but it was my own fault. I used Hidden Power Psychic because I wanted to see what my hidden power was, and it didn't do as much damage as Return. But yeah, nothing overly interesting here. I'm at such a high level, and if you remember Flannery from Emerald, she's a little bit more difficult, but maybe in like a billion years when I'm not still, you know, thinking about the Ralts thing, I'll do Emerald, but goodness gracious, oh my god. We still have a lot more run to go. Let's still talk about Ruby and Sapphire because there's a lot more game, including Norman. Now, funny enough, after you beat Flannery, this is the first time we don't really open up much more of the game. We get Route 111, where there are a few trainers and the fossils, which we can't really use, but Norman is back in Petalburg City. We don't get Surf yet, we get it after beat Norman, and although the trainers in his gym aren't too problematic, Norman himself is just about as tough as every other odd-numbered gym leader. He's really, really tough. And let's talk about why. There's actually a simple explanation: slacking. Slacking is beastly. I mean, look at those stats. These are better than several legendary Pokemon, and I know it has the Truant ability, so it only attacks 1 out of every 2 turns, but that wasn't really stopping him from completely destroying me. I mean, I was usually able to get past the first slacking. By the time I got to Vigoroth, I didn't have a lot of health. Now, a Flail usually would be good here, so I'd get past the Vigoroth, but his second slacking has so much health, such great defense. I'm not one-shotting it with Flail, and it's an easy retaliation KO, and I was really stumped. Like, I wasn't close to beating Norman. Think about it. How much health would I really need to survive another slacking? I mean, I would have to go up maybe another 10 levels. And considering how few trainers I unlocked, I'd have to go back into the wild. I really didn't want to do that. And so I made a decision. Instead of going back to the wild, I'm going to try another strategy that I hate. I hate this. But at least it turned out to be kind of humorous how this worked out. And what am I talking about? Well, I decided to teach Double Team. You get the TM for Double Team somewhere along the way. I had it at this point. And with Double Team, Norman's AI gets really confused. So I start off by using 4 Double Teams, and he of course tries to go for Facade, but then he uses Yawn. And Yawn doesn't check for accuracy. And once I have 4 Double Teams, although he will use a Facade once, he just keeps spamming Yawn, even when I'm already asleep. So, although I'm asleep, and you'd think that's a problem, because the AI thinks, oh no, can't attack, must use move that hits every time, he'll use Yawn and sometimes Feint Attack, which, combining my high special defense with Slacking's low special attack, does nothing. Now, I was trying to feint it without Norman using a Hyper Potion, since that would be safer. Unfortunately, even though I used an Ice Beam since it's a 4-hit KO, I still just put him in range for Norman to use the Hyper Potion. So you can see now what 3 returns does, and how that would have definitely put it in range. Norman will not use his second Hyper Potion here, so it's safe just to knock it out. Now, the Vigoroth is a 2-hit KO, but I was really worried about the second slacking, obviously. I shouldn't have been, but I was, and you'll see why in a second. But anyway, I manipulate the Vigoroth's health so that Norman will use his Hyper Potion here. He only has 2 of them. And then just knock it out normally. The Vigoroth usually will miss with its attack, so it's not a big issue whatsoever. And out comes the hardest Pokemon I've faced so far, or so I thought, because Norman just used Focus Punch. He never even attempted this move in any of my other battles. So although the strategy I used was incredibly cheap, it did mess with his AI, which is kinda neat. Because you saw with the first slacking, Yawn, and Feint Attack, and now Focus Punch, which does check for accuracy. In fact, it's a terrible move. Focus Punch deals 150 base power damage, but you need to charge it up and then attack at the end of the turn, and if you get attacked, it fails. Of course I'm going to attack every possible turn, so it just doesn't do anything. And the fight is over and easy. I was here for a solid 25-30 minutes, which, considering at my level, that was a lot. Of course, once I started using Double Team, it didn't take all that long, and I didn't feel super accomplished here because Double Team isn't even allowed in competitive battles. Not that I have those rules in place, it's a move in the game, and I know there are some gym leaders in the game that rely on accuracy and evasion, but I don't love it. Anyway, to make up for this really kind of cheesy victory, I replaced Double Team with Surf. Finally, I have Surf, one of the strongest water moves in the entire game. And it is surprisingly a lot less useful than you'd think. Like, don't get me wrong, it's incredibly useful, but because of my terrible special attack, Return oftentimes becomes the better move. A lot of Pokemon have decent special defense, and so Return just works better sometimes. I was using Return about half the time, which shocked me. I figured I would just be using Surf every time unless we had something that resisted water, but no, it just didn't work out that way. Anyway, now a giant chunk of the game opens up. If you've ever heard that meme, 7.9 out of 10, too much water, IGN, that actually was about Ruby and Sapphire. They felt there was too much water in the game, and there definitely is a lot of water, more than I personally would have liked. And since we have Surf, we can go up Route 104 through 106 or 7, I forget, and then we can head eastwards past Mobile City, heading towards the route where you actually can catch a Feebas. Funny enough, this is where you catch the darn thing, and it is just as annoying as it is in Diamond and Pearl, although it doesn't change its location every day, so that's kind of nice. Anyway, yeah, you fight Team Magma again, you fight the rival, which is super easy. Now that we have Ice Beam, Grovyle does nothing. It sucks because the rival is often one of the most exciting fights in the whole game, and between Return, Surf, and Ice Beam, it's not even a contest. It's just, I'm too overleveled. Let's face it. That's a consequence of what I've been doing so far, and the battles that are going to be exciting are few and far between. Winona, the flying type gym leader in Fortree City, is one of those battles that isn't too exciting. It was my first battle. There's really not much to say because I barely even remembered the battle prior to watching back the footage. You will notice that my low special attack, most are 2-hit KOs, even something like the Altaria, where you would assume it would be a 1-hit KO. And that, again, it really sucks. If I were to do this again, I would be a lot smarter about making sure my Feebas wasn't so terrible with special attack. But the pattern at least continues between easy gym, hard gym, and let's not stop here. There's a bunch more game that opens up, some more obnoxious Team Magma stuff, none of which is difficult. And I'm not just skipping through because this video is getting long. There's just nothing really interesting to say. The battles are a complete joke. Of course, until we get to Tate and Liza, the psychic-type gym leaders. Now, Tate and Liza are unique in that they're supposed to introduce the double battle mechanic. I love double battles. I plan to do a run in Pokemon Coliseum because no one has to this point, and I have a really cool idea, so spoiler alert for a future video. But for a solo Pokemon run, mandatory double battles are kind of awful because, well, for one, the game doesn't even let you battle them with just one Pokemon. We're gonna need a second Pokemon in battle. It doesn't violate the rules because technically this is, I mean, if you're just using one Pokemon, this is as far as you could get. But realistically, it's still a Feebas only run because we're gonna use Magikarp and, well, obviously we're gonna use Magikarp. And Magikarp just knows Splash, so except for absorbing a hit, even though it's technically going to attack in battle with giant air quotes that you can't see, it's not really going to be doing anything. And this leads us to the second reason this fight sucks. It's a 2-on-1 with two pretty decent Pokemon, and I am lucky that Surf hits both of them, and in this generation only, Surf doesn't hit my Pokemon, although I actually would like that for two reasons. One, it would get rid of the Magikarp instantly and make it like I never even had it. And two, Pokemon that just hit your opponents but don't hit you do 50% less damage if they hit multiple opponents. So Surf will do 50% while something like Earthquake would do its normal damage. That's changed in Generation 4 and beyond, but in Generation 3 that's how it works, so I'm doing a lot less damage with Surf, even though it's super effective. And because there are two Pokemon, I'm kind of just spamming Surf. I don't really have a strategy here, which makes it tough because it's hard to manage two Pokemon versus one. There's just a lot going on, so many different combinations of moves. Solrock can use Sunny Day, potions can be used. It's just really tough to figure out exactly what I should be doing, and frankly, spamming Surf seems like the most consistent way to win, but it still took me like 10 or so battles with a super effective move, and unlike an Emerald, these are their only Pokemon, so I was actually surprised. I figured this wouldn't be so difficult, and compared to Wattson or Roxanne, it's not the worst, but I still spent a solid 20 or so minutes here, and I tried to figure out better strategies, but the truth of the matter is, I guess I could have used Rain Dance or something. I actually didn't really think about that throughout this run, that Rain Dance may have been more helpful than I gave it credit for. But spamming Surf is what I did. You know, hindsight, as they say, is 20/20, and it worked, frankly, so I don't know why I'm beating myself up for winning a battle. It's just, you know me, I love inventing strategies, being creative. I didn't really do that here, so in that sense, I have failed you, audience. I'm sorry. But since your expectations are lowered, I don't have much to say about Wallace either. He's really easy. It did take 2 battles only because I got an unlucky critical hit by Whiscash, and since Whiscash in the successful fight got a Rain Dance up, I used Surf. Again, how did I not think about Rain Dance? I'm still kind of mad about that. Anyway, you just spam return otherwise. That's it. There's not much to it. It's cool that eventually I get to take down on my Lotic. I know you guys really liked when Magikarp defeated Gyarados. It's kind of cool to see that. But that's the Hoenn League for you. I mean, we still have the Elite Four, and don't you worry. If you thought that up to this point, I had it too easy, that the Elite Four would be a joke, no. The Elite Four is awful. I mean, Wally's easy. All the other trainers I didn't mention, they're easy. But the Elite Four? This is honestly one of the toughest Elite Four battles I've ever done. And before I battled everyone, I decided to use all the rare candies that my Zigzagoon army was so nice to accumulate for me, and got to level 100 right away, because I knew this was going to be tough. There's no point trying at level 98 or whatever. Let's just do everything at level 100, so I know exactly what I'm going to need to do if I want to beat every member. And the first member, Sidney, you know, you wouldn't think a dark type Elite Four member would give me so many problems, but when you look at the team, there are quite a few Pokemon that resist water, so he's not ideal, especially because he leads off with Mightyena, and Mightyena uses Intimidate, and since Return is going to be the move I want to use most, that's less than ideal. Anyway, against the Mightyena, I use Surf. It's a 2-hit KO, but he will heal. Thankfully, the second hit I get a critical. Doesn't make too big a difference, but yeah, that's what happened. Anyway, then comes out the Cacturn. Unfortunately, a single Ice Beam is not enough to feint the Cacturn, but it decides to use Cotton Spore, which is actually a little more annoying, since that will make me slower than some of Sidney's Pokemon, but it'll work out. Anyway, a second Ice Beam, I still outspeed the Cacturn, 2 down. Now comes out the Sharpedo, and I have equipped a Persimberry, because Sharpedo loves to use Swagger. Swagger will sharply raise my attack, so that makes up for the Intimidate, but it confuses me. And the Persimberry just gives me a nice little attack boost, a single return more than enough to take out the Sharpedo. The Absol, even with the single boost in attack, not enough to take it out in one hit. Thankfully, it just uses Snatch, and it doesn't really do much of anything, so not a problem. The only Pokemon that can be really annoying is the Shiftry. Shiftry knows Double Team, it also knows Swagger, and you can just find yourself missing, hitting yourself in confusion. It's very easy to lose against Sidney right here. Drove me nuts, so I feel less bad about using Double Team since he does it. Anyway, in this battle, I don't hit myself in confusion, get off a couple Ice Beams, and that's 1 down. But Sidney was not nearly as bad as Phoebe. She is probably one of the more annoying Elite Four members, and this is because her first Dusclops knows Curse, a move that normally I welcome, but in this run is pretty terrible. Curse, for half of the Pokemon's HP, will deduct a quarter of my HP every turn. I'm not winning the battle in 4 more turns, I just don't have the special attack necessary. Even if I had 31 IVs, it wouldn't work. So I simply cannot afford for her to use Curse. Thankfully, if I get a crit, it doesn't matter, or she sometimes just decides not to use Curse. It's kind of like 50-50. But even if it doesn't use Curse, there are a couple other pitfalls. Dusclops can use Confuse Ray, which I don't think I need to explain why that's terrible. Plus, the Banette will like to use Spite, and even though not being attacked is nice, I might run out of Surfs. It's actually kind of common because Dusclops has Pressure, so every time I use Surf, it takes up 2 power points. And then if Spite takes off 4 or 5, I could run out, and the second Dusclops is pretty bulky. So there were a lot of battles where I simply was fainting due to lack of health. It was quite difficult. In the successful battle, however, I do get a Shadow Punch from the first Dusclops. 2 Surfs take it out. Then comes out the first Banette. It does use Spite, so I don't lose health, but I am kind of running low on Surfs, so I gotta be careful. The Sableye uses Shadow Ball. This is pretty common. 2 Surfs again. Bye-bye Sableye. Then the second Banette comes out, and it loves to spam Skill Swap. This doesn't really help me because I don't need Insomnia, but at least it doesn't attack me. Anyway, you see me use an Ice Beam just to preserve power points. Then the second Dusclops comes out, I use Surf, and it goes for Confuse Ray, which can be a real battle ender. I go for Surf again, and not only does it hit, but I get a critical hit, so incredibly lucky. I'm not complaining. This battle took me quite a bit longer than it otherwise should have, but there are just a lot of lucky components going on, and I would say this time it's not actually my fault. Phoebe just loves lucky strategies, but thankfully after Phoebe, the next 2 Elite Four members aren't as bad. Now, Glacia I only battled like 5 or so times, and there are definitely some annoying things about her. She has moves that can freeze or paralyze like Body Slam and a bunch of ice moves, so that's annoying. I don't think I got frozen, but I did get paralyzed, and that's just a reset. She also, her Pokemon are pretty bulky, which just allows for more opportunity for things to go wrong. But if you get, I hate to say lucky, she's pretty easy. And this isn't absurd luck, it's just a little bit lucky. Anyway, the Glalie loves to spam Hail, but in this battle it used Light Screen. And you wouldn't think this would matter, but it actually was really important later on, because the first Celio comes out, uses Body Slam, doesn't do too much damage, 2 returns take out the Celio. But the second Celio, rather than hitting me with another Body Slam, decides to go for Hail. So that's 1 less attack than I would normally face, and this is huge. Unfortunately, to make up for this, the Glalie hits me with a Shadow Ball, which is quite common, but I get a special defense drop, which will affect what's going to happen later. 2 returns once again, bye-bye Glalie. The Walrein comes out, and instead of just going for Body Slam, it mixes in a Blizzard and it hits. Thankfully, the combination of attacks gets me to 6 HP. It is in range for its Citrus Berry, but not in range for Glacia to use one of her potions, so I can use a max-powered Flail to knock out the Walrein and to defeat her. Anyway, the easiest Elite Four member, probably unsurprisingly, is Drake, and he is a Dragon-type trainer. One of the biggest problems with Dragon-type Pokemon, pretty much until more recently, is that the best ones were all double weak to Ice. So anytime you had an Ice move on a Pokemon, the Dragon-type Gym Leader or Elite Four member was just a complete pushover, and this isn't really an exception. He leads off with Shelgon. I use Ice Beam. I have the Nevermelt Ice equipped, which you get from the Shoal Cave, and 1-hit KOs the Shelgon. The Altaria comes out, and even though we have the 4 times weakness to Ice, not a 1-hit KO guaranteed, I don't get it. Gets off a Dragon Dance, Drake heals, but the second Ice Beam does hit 1-hit KO. And yeah, that's how the rest of the battle would go. There are 2 more Flygons and a Salamence. Both have worse special defense than the Altaria. All 3, 1 Ice Beam, 1-hit KO. And that's fitting because this was my 1 battle against Drake. Kind of anticlimactic that the final member of the Elite Four would be such a pushover, but don't let that lull you into a false sense of security. Because the next battle against the champion took longer than pretty much all the Elite Four battles, and the 2 hardest gym leaders, Roxanne and Wattson, all the time I spent planning and battling them combined, I spent longer on Steven Stone, which might surprise you. Steven is often known as one of the weaker champions because he does have a type theme to his team, unlike other champions that just use everything. But against this Feebas, his team does an amazing job. And let's talk about how terrible this fight is, because there really isn't any part of this fight that was any kind of fun. So he starts off with Skarmory, and Skarmory knows Aerial Ace and Toxic, and then nothing else really matters. If it uses Toxic, that's really problematic, because, I mean, I can't afford to take that damage, I don't use items, so I really would rather it not use Toxic, and the AI is programmed to use Toxic a lot at full health. So it loves going for Toxic, which is amazing. If you get by the Skarmory, you think you would one-shot the Aggron with Surf, but it's only a 14 out of 16 probability because of my terrible special attack. And here is where the bad IVs really matter, because as you'll see, if I had better IVs, this fight would have been so much better. But let me go on. The next Pokemon is one I have no idea how to pronounce. I've always called it Cradily, but Cradily seems to make more sense. I don't care. Tell me how you pronounce it in the comment section. I'm calling it Cradily. So anyway, Cradily is a grass Pokemon. It knows Giga Drain. I have good special defense, but yeah, that's going to be fun. Anyway, none of this matters because Metagross it's just unfair in this challenge. It knows Hyper Beam, which deals roughly 60 to 75% of my health, which even though it needs to recharge doesn't matter. If I have 25% of my health taken off or more, a single Hyper Beam and I'm done. So that's awesome. The second thing it has is Earthquake, which does over half. Not that I can heal anyway, but basically, I have no way to deal with this thing. It's like 4-hit KO to take out the Metagross, and it needs 1 or 2 hits at most. And I tried again and again and again. And this is where I got frustrated with myself, because if I had planned this out properly, if I had did calculations, if I had thought about this, I would have bred a better Feebas, because if you look at these calculations, even if it had 20 IVs in attack, and if I planned ahead and had Rain Dance, because I've been saving time and again, and I don't want to go back and get Rain Dance, there's other reasons too that I'll talk about, but I would have to battle all the Elite Four members again. That wouldn't be fun for me to do. But anyway, if I had thought about these things, it goes from a 4-hit KO to a 2-hit KO. I could also have given it more special attack EVs, but that would mean having to spend more time finding Ralts, so maybe I'm glad I did that. But these are just little things that really made the Steven fight harder than they had to be. He would still be really difficult, but the fact he was almost impossible was kind of a matter of me not planning ahead and vastly underestimating just how powerful his Metagross is. All the other Pokemon I had strategies to deal with, not Metagross. So what I would do is I would look into my TM section of the bag, and I would try to find a move that would work. I tried Blizzard, I tried using Rest and a Chesto Berry to get more HP. Unfortunately, Sleep Talk is not available. I tried a lot of things. Finally, I settled on a move combination that might look ridiculous, but it worked after like 100 attempts. And I'm not proud of this move list. It is entirely a luck-based move list, but I would like to stress the fact that there is a more consistent strategy that would have been available if I'd planned, but these are kind of unique and fun strats, so let's go for them. Anyway, the Skarmory, I initially actually tried to use up Hyper Potions, because what I was finding out as I did this like 50 or so times with various different strategies is I would get close to KOing the Metagross. In fact, I may have once done so already and then been knocked out by the Armaldo, which was so disappointing. But regardless, one thing I was noticing when I was close to knocking out the Metagross is that Steven would save it with a Hyper Potion, which, trust me, was the most frustrating thing in the world. Now, I couldn't find any information on how many Hyper Potions Steven has, but the AI is actually really smart. I would try to manipulate the Skarmory's HP so that he would just use up all his hyper potions here, but he doesn't. He's too smart. He'll only use one on Skarmory, and then he'll just let Skarmory faint. And this is true with a bunch of his Pokemon. He has like a set limit. He rations them. So I believe he will always have one left for the Metagross. So that's amazing. So how did I actually defeat Steven, or did I? Well, let me show you the best battle I had. I had a Lax Incense equipped, which gave me, I believe, a 5% chance that his moves miss. So yeah, that's awesome. Anyway, the Skarmory is pretty easy. By this point, it's down to a science. I would use a single Water Pulse, hopefully got the hidden Confusion, which would avoid me taking damage. It really doesn't matter. And then I would just use 2 Surfs. If I got a Spikes, that would be better. If I got a Toxic, that would be kind of bad. 1 Aerial Ace and a Spikes is kind of the best case scenario, which is what I got here. Then comes out the Aggron. The question is, will I one-hit KO? I did one-hit KO, so then we go on to the Cradilly. I actually looked this up between takes. It's Cradilly. So against the Cradilly, I use Attract immediately, and I'm going to speed this part up because essentially, I'm just trying to get rid of this thing, and it loves to spam Confuse Ray, which makes it take longer. But one thing you'll notice eventually is if I run low on health and I have it down to a science at this point when I should heal, I use Rest. I don't have a Chesto Berry or Sleep Talk, so I'm just asleep, and this is where Attract comes in because I'm hoping he doesn't really attack all those turns. Giga Drain only has 5 power points anyway, as does Ancient Power. Thankfully, it never took me that long to defeat the Cradilly, but it is a long fight, especially because in this fight, Steven used not 1, but 2 full restores. Trying to anticipate how much damage I will do is tough because he has Giga Drain, and because I'm not sure when he will use it, or when Attract will stop him from attacking altogether. I tried my best, but this is kind of just guesswork, and unfortunately, I got the worst case, which is 2 full restores, but in the end, it's not a terribly difficult Pokemon to get past. It's just one that can take a while. Speaking of which, I didn't even mention the Claydol before. Now this is a long and tedious fight. So I need as much health as possible to even have a chance against his strongest Pokemon, Metagross, which is going to come out next. So I want to end this fight with full health. Thankfully, based on my stats, it will take him 3 moves to knock me out, so I can always heal with the rest before that happens, and stall all 10 Earthquake power points and all 5 Ancient Power points. However, there are a couple things that can obviously go wrong. A critical hit isn't actually fatal, but can be problematic. The second thing that can go wrong is Ancient Power boosts. Ancient Power has a 10% chance of raising all his stats. He got 2 of them, which really contributed to a problem later because he also knows Reflect and Light Screen. I don't really care about Reflect, but Light Screen, I don't want that up by the time I faint the Claydol. Unfortunately, sometimes I really just don't have a choice. And that's what happened in this battle. By the time I got rid of all the Earthquakes and Ancient Powers and I was ready to take him out, he was able to outspeed me with the Light Screen, which is not how I wanted this to go at all, because obviously I'm going to be doing half damage to the Metagross. Considering how many times this Metagross just completely demolished me, this wasn't looking good. But then the Metagross comes out and Water Pulse confuses on the first turn. This is exactly why I have it. Plus Metagross hits itself in confusion. And even with the Light Screen, I have a chance now. Obviously now I go for Surf, just trying to do as much damage as possible. Once again, it hits itself in confusion. So Light Screen unlucky, 2 hits in confusion, very lucky. Unfortunately, after my 3rd Surf, it snaps out of confusion and hits me with an Earthquake, and now you truly see just how much damage that move does. And because it's not in confusion anymore, this battle was pretty much a wash. I mean, only a critical hit would really do anything. Oh my god. Now, will I pretend this isn't the luckiest thing that could happen? Remember, Light Screen is up. Critical hits ignore that, but I had no chance unless I wanted to risk a confusion. It was pretty much a 6% chance either way that this battle could go any further. And I have been battling Steven for 2 hours at this point. I was ecstatic. Now all I have to do is use Surf twice against Armaldo. It uses Ancient Power. Please, no Ancient Power boost. No Ancient Power boost. And we win. Now this was an adventure. It may not have been as strategic as past runs, but oh my goodness, was I really starting to think it may be impossible. I can imagine why no one has tried this before. It was horrifically tedious to do this, but at least I can say that it has been done. Pretty much any Pokemon that can learn TMs should be possible, although we're going to test some other more impossible Pokemon in this new recurring series, because I don't pretend to be the most original YouTuber out there, but darn it, I will make sure that you guys get challenges that are super tedious and that no one else has the patience to do. So thank you for watching this video. We have a bunch of new videos hopefully coming out soon. This one took me way longer than I thought to not just play, but editing takes a while too, so I can't promise when the next one will be. But if you have any suggestions of Pokemon you'd like to see, a challenge you'd like me to do, or a series that I have neglected for a while that you might want to see again, let me know in the comments. Always leave a like, it helps out tremendously. And thanks for watching. Take care, guys.